first speaker is our CEO, LM, followed by Puff Fältström. Welcome.
Okay, hi everyone. I want to get my slides, yes. Come up here, make an introduction. Please say welcome to everybody, and that was the topic I was going to talk about. If I get some slides. Okay, so the first thing that I know a lot of people is going to ask for, it's printed on the lot of places on the small banners and everything, but that is the password for the wireless. It's also printed on the back of the badge, and you also have the hashtag if you want to tweet something or Facebook something or Instagram something or Snapchat something or whatever anyone use the hashtags for. Netnod, I'm going to just say a little bit. Most of you probably know us already. Most of you is probably a customer in one way or another, or a partner to us in one way or another. We're working at the core of the internet. We started, and the main business we're doing is running the 5 IXPs in Sweden and Denmark. We also manage the iRoute service net, which is one of the 13 route servers for the internet. What not everybody probably knows, but has been doing this for quite a while as well. We also run DNS Anycast for a lot of TLDs outside all over the world, ranging from HK and New Zealand to Sweden and Germany and a lot of others. We also recently, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we launched the DNS Anycast servers for the Swedish enterprise market together with a couple of partners. And you're probably going to hear something more about that later. We also run the national time servers for Sweden. And on top of all this, we're working on the good of the internet. The other thing I want to introduce is myself. I'm new here. I joined Netnod as the CEO this summer, started in the 11th of July. And I also know I don't know all of you, so I want to have you make an introduction to me as well. And I realize this is not very practical, so we do it like this. Can you please stand up if you are known normally with a nickname, like LM, instead of your given name? It's fair. No, keep standing, keep standing. This is an exercise. If you can configure BGP, please stand up. No, that was not. Just configure it. It doesn't have to work. It's like the internet. If you have worked in the internet industry for longer time than Netnod, that is 20 years, please stand up. No, keep standing. You don't get to chicken out. Everybody should stand if you match any of these criteria. If you have worked or is working for a content provider, for instance, like Google. If you have worked or is working for a telco or an ISP, for instance, Tele2 or Sonera. If you enjoy sailing as a hobby. Okay, that's about it. I think we have the last one. If you would like to see IPv6 supported everywhere, please stand up. And I think we know each other pretty good right now. So with that, I will wish you all welcome here, and I will hand over to my colleague Patrik Fältström.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have been here a little bit longer than Ellen, but still I cannot really say newcomer anymore. I try to say that and my staff is beating me up, so I'm not saying that. I got on the task to try to explain to you and try to, not so much explain, but tell my version of the story of Netnod during the last 20 years, which is the life of Netnod. Many of you was around and probably very key involved in various events that I will try to describe. So you can beat me up afterwards, but even more interestingly, tell me your version of the story. Tell each other's your version of the story, and try to sort of talk about sort of good old days. Oops. There was a clicker somewhere. Okay. So I don't see the screen. Okay. There is a computer here, but I don't see myself what's on the monitor, so what's on the screen. So I need to turn my back to you. I'm sorry. So Netnod has been around for 20 years, and why is that slide? That's not the first slide. Maybe it's the wrong presentation. I only had 1 cup of coffee this morning. So that is absolutely the problem. Okay, I have 4 presentations with your name on it. Yes, 2 PDFs and 2 keynote. One says Netnod 20, one says engineering. Yes. It's the one Netnod 20. Either keynote or PDF. You see, I only had 1 cup of coffee. I managed to completely confuse my staff. I'm sorry, Lehman. And then we'll go to the first slide. Yep. That's how it was left here. I know. I said, I confuse you. Maybe my part of the organization is sort of the Ministry of Confusability. You know? Thank you. And now I also see the slides here. Thank you very, very much. So, Netnod 20 years. So what is Netnod? Here is the formal organization. We have some staff. We have some revenue. We don't make. We get some money in that you pay us. We have some money out that we pay you. There is a little bit of surplus, but we are not for profit. We are working together with Foundation to make sure that we are reinvesting everything that we are making in what we are doing. So this is us. Lars Mikael Jogbäck, CEO, founded 1996. That's 20 years. But if you go back a little bit further to try to understand why, thank you, Peter. Whoa. Once again, thank you, Lehman. 35 years ago, this is basically when we started to think about in Sweden, this thing with the monopoly that was not really a good idea. So we started to try to understand what to do about this. This monopoly, they had some services, they were working for years and years and years, and then suddenly you could have like star 21, star 15, square, and they launched maybe 2 of those each year, and they were headlined in the news when they launched a new service. Today, of course, we get thousands of new apps every day. So the telco was responsible for everything. You didn't need any Netnod. They were responsible for everything, and they were owned by the government. Life was so much easier, but boy, it sucked. So in 1989, how many people in here in the room was around helping build this thing? There are a couple of you, right? Oh, Steve, yeah, yes. Good. Excellent, thank you. So what we did was to build Sunet in Sweden. That was then the IP network, was only one. There was sort of a star-shaped thing. It had one connection, which is important here, to NSFnet. It was a 64 kilobits per second satellite link, and it was not full. Today, people are complaining that they cannot play Pokemon Go with their sort of 3D connections. It was basically a double star from Stockholm, both in the Nordic countries and also in Sweden. So if we look a little bit more globally in the world, this was the internet. So all of this led to a couple of things. First of all, that Peter Lötberg and a few others really established Stockholm and KTH as one of the main hubs in the world for the internet. And that's one of the reasons why the root server ended up with KTH, and then later with the Autonomica and then Netnod in 1993. So Stockholm was really sort of the core. But there were two things here that was a little bit problematic. One, that there was an acceptable use policy with National Science Foundation that said that commercial traffic was not allowed on NSFnet. And that ended up being a problem when the satellite link was connected in September 1989. The second thing, so we needed some commercial players. The second thing that happened was that KTH felt that, wait a second, maybe we don't really want to deal with these more commercial services. So what happened was that SWIPNet was created in March 1991, 1st of March. Hello, Jörgen. And within a 5-year agreement to run commercial IP services in cooperation with the organization SNUS. So in 1996, all of that was merged. But anyway, so SWIPNet was created. Then Telia came back and said, okay, they created TIPNet a little bit later. But then we suddenly had 3 ISPs, SUNET, TIPNet, and SWIPNet. And there was some interest from Telia and Tele2 to exchange traffic with each other, but they didn't really want to have a connection in between the two of them. They didn't want to have a PNI. But if it was the case that both were connected to KTH and a neutral player, that was sort of acceptable enough to actually move some packets. So what happened was that at the KTH, there was a 1000 megabits per second Ethernet switch was put up, and the 3 ISPs connected. So this was it. Boom. Okay. Then, of course, it was kind of interesting also for when other ISPs arrived to connect, and at the same time, other services that were sort of shared between the ISPs were also connected. So KTH NOC itself was connected like an ISP on this switch. So everything grew, so it looked like this. Not so difficult. But we still don't have Netnode, but this was sort of the origin of the IX. All of this was at KTH. How many people recognize this? yeah, me. Okay, this was it. And the most interesting picture, I think, these pictures were taken in the office yesterday. This kraftenhet 1, kraftenhet 2. So yes, it's the old FDDI switches. So from Ethernet to FDDI, that was sort of what the evolution was. And this web page, KTH NOC, this web page I made the screen dump this morning. The web page is still up there. Those were the days. So EBO, Nordnet, SUNET, KTH NOC, and you see a picture of the switch. So KTH came by and say, wait a second, are you really going to continue to run this commercial service? That was not really optimal. So can we do anything about this? Well, the Swedish Operators Forum was created. Swedish Network User Society was created. Big discussions on what to do. And ultimately, it was decided that KTH was not a proper organizational home for this service. So what happened was that a foundation was created, the TU Foundation, Stiftelsen för telematikens utveckling, and the foundation has a fully owned subsidiary, which is Netnod. And Netnod was created on October 8, 1996. One of the interesting minutes is from the Swedish Operators Forum on 21st of January 1998. The minutes are up on the web, where you can see sort of the main directions of Netnod was decided upon. And it says that it is reported that the exchange in Gothenburg is almost ready. It was before that only Stockholm. And the big question of whether all ISPs need to be at all IXs, and a few other questions that were discussed and decided. So in phase 2, the FDDI rings were outgrown. There were some discussions on technology. It was decided to use Cisco DPT. There was a discussion whether Ethernet or DPT was to be used. DPT was in use. First 622 megabits per second, then 2.5 gigabits per second. Then in Kista, Solik was created. Some people that were involved in Solix. Yes, Mikael, like, yes. And they did provide a service using Ethernet. A little bit later, Netnod started to use Ethernet as well, so you could have there were the ability to get both Ethernet and DPT versions of the switch, and Netnod added IXs in Malmö, Sundsvall, and Luleå. I call this phase 2. In parallel with all of this, KTH also had an issue with the domain name management and other kind of services that KTH was managing at the KTH NOC. So another foundation was created, IIS, Stiftelsen för Internetinfrastruktur. And they were created to manage the .se top-level domain. They also had a fully owned subsidiary, NIC-SE. And for operational issues, the question was then how should we handle the staff that were dealing with this top-level domain and dealing with the IX and dealing with all these things. So in reality, we had 2 foundations, then 2 fully owned incorporated that were sort of the host of the IX and the host of the top-level domain. And then a separate entity called Autonomica was created, where individual humans, were hired as staff. And Autonomica was created to operate the .se top-level domain, the IXs, and everything else. Autonomica ended up being fully owned 100% by Netnod, but it could have been the case that it was owned by both or some other kind of combination. But Autonomica ended up being fully owned by Netnod, or by the TU Foundation in that constellation, not in the IIS. And IIS ended up being a customer to Netnod for the operation. That's sort of the legal setup. On top of all of this, Autonomica that had staff wrote a contract with Nordinet on taking over operations of iRoute. In reality, after Matti Rendahl started to run iRoute in 1993, very quickly Lars-Johan Lehmann picked up the actual operation, and since then, Lehmann is the one that has been running iRoute. The organization that pays Lehmann's salary has changed, but iRoute stays with Lehmann. That's, for me personally, that's the most worrisome generation shift we have to do to find a new Lehmann. He has children. Not so interested in iRoute yet. Let's see what we can do. It was also the case that there were other services that were on there, not only .se, iRoute, also TP-Test that Ragnar Lönn was developing, and NTP servers that Peter was doing. Peter was doing everything else as well, but anyway, specifically NTP. Today, Netnod also, which is something new that I will talk about later today, Netnod has also started to provide DNS services not only for TLDs and the root, but also via resellers for enterprise. DNS node for partners, for those of you not knowing that. And staff and operations in Autonomica has merged into Netnod, just like NIC-SE subsidiary to IIS has merged into IIS. I also found some other kind of goods in the office. Things that, no, we're not using them anymore. They're actually turned off. So another thing that Netnod were able to do is that just because Netnod sort of started to run these services, and the regulated PTS found out that, wait a second, It's only Televerket that actually has these secure locations. To be able to create a good market in Sweden, it's important that there are neutral locations which are safe and stable and robust, where providers of communication service in Sweden can rent space at a reasonable cost. So they started to build these mountain caves, and Netnod, just like many of you in here, ISPs, telcos, cell phone providers, and whatnot in Sweden are customers. So Netnod established in these bunkers at all our locations except Luleå. I will come back to that. Looks like this, for those of you not been there. Another change was that when moving to from a ring-based, token-based protocol to Ethernet, and it was even more important to actually have a diverse deployment here in Stockholm with redundant switches that were not connected with each other. So it's up to the customer to actually move the traffic over one or the other, however way they want, but to have complete redundancy. And this is, of course, something that we've been discussing with all of you, how to connect to these switches. So the product that we are selling in Stockholm are two connections, both to Stockholm B and Stockholm C. And we have everything from 1 to 100 gig. But you know about this part. If we just look 10 years back, 10 years ago, Netnod had 7 employees. 4 of them are still here. Are you here? Liman, Johan, Kai, and Håkan. Yep. So who am I to explain what actually happened? The number of customers, of course, have expanded quite a lot. We launched a reach service, so it's possible to buy connection to the IXS from remotely. You don't have to have presence close to us. And in 2011, when I was hired, there was an organizational change that was made that split Netnod in 3 different departments: operations that Håkan runs, research and development that I run, and communication and outreach that Nurani runs. And here's the, well, I can as well show you this, just like you can. So the growth has been quite significant also the last couple of years, just because of all of you, everything that we're doing, new products, new services, and just new stuff. And I think that's it. This was my story. And what has happened up until today. And the rest of the day, we from Netnod will talk about specifically where we are and where we'll go in the future. Thank you everyone for coming.